I am a workaholic naturally because I really enjoy what I do. I don't operate very well as a lone wolf. So I have this constant inner battle between, am I working hard enough? Am I looking after myself too much? My natural default is to see the good, even when there's clearly red flags.
Hi everyone, you're listening to the Unrelenting Drive podcast. And before we get into today's episode, I just wanted to let you know, I started this podcast because over the years, I've had hundreds of the most inspiring conversations of my life with small business owners, and they really helped me grow and scale my own business and get my mindset right, even when times were really tough. I wanted to capture those conversations and make them available to other small business owners who are following in my footsteps. And I've just got a small request. If you enjoy this episode, if you find it really inspiring, if you find it helps you in your own business, then please just like it and subscribe to our YouTube channel. The more subscribers we get, the more we can invest in making the podcast better. So enjoy the episode. Hi everyone. So I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Hannah Brady from Brady Creative today on the podcast. Hannah, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. If you could just describe to the audience what you do.
Yeah, sure. So the Brady Creative is a marketing agency, essentially. It's a business that I started with my mum back in March 2020. So I'm sure we can talk about that a little bit more, but that was, epic timing on our part. But essentially, we're trying to establish ourselves as a strategic agency. So we focus on actually building marketing strategies for people, because that's where a lot of people fall short. And marketing is one of those areas now where it's very quickly overwhelming because there's so many things you can do. So we do a lot around marketing strategy. And then generally, once we've done that with the clients, it's all about helping them actually produce the content, get it out on the right channels. So social media marketing, email marketing. We also do quite a lot around like brand development, just the design side of things and how things look. And more recently, we're doing a lot more around like personal branding as well, because that's a huge thing for a lot of people now. Not everyone gets it, but people are intrigued who maybe wouldn't have been intrigued a few years ago. So we're not quite full service. Yeah, I'd say we're really, it's marketing strategy, social media content and management, and then the actual branding side of things.
Okay, that's amazing. Actually, I do find a lot of marketing agencies out there, they just focus on one activity, and I'm sure they do that one activity really well, but there's never that discussion about how it fits into the bigger picture and how it mutually supports other things they do. So I do think there's a massive space there for someone to actually look at it at a strategic level.
Yeah, I think for me, when we started, so my background is the strategic side of things, and prior to starting the business, I would have said I'm a marketing generalist. Like I wasn't a specialist. I did a marketing and advertising degree, and I understand all arms of marketing quite well. So my career, I ended up running small teams within SME and then a couple of corporate, larger organizations. So I was responsible for conducting all of the work and working with a team, who's doing that on social media, how's that feeding into emails, how are we doing that on the website, all of those things. Whereas my mum's background is graphic design, art direction, and she worked in a huge corporate for 20 years. So very, very different experiences. And we'd both had experiences outsourcing to agencies. And my experience was that you either get, I don't think this is so much the case now, but you either get really creative agencies who are like, we can make everything look beautiful and we'll do all the really sexy advertising stuff and we'll make it look really shiny and lovely. And then you would get other agencies that were more focused on the darker arts of marketing. So like your SEO, your pay-per-click, the sort of technical side of your web development, all your meta tagging and your building and everything that goes on behind the scenes there. And I noticed that I hadn't come across an agency that bridged the two very well. And really that was because not a lot of agencies lead with strategy, which is where you need to start. If you haven't got a plan, it can be really difficult, especially if you just take social media on its own. There's so many channels you can use. And if you don't even know who you're trying to target, you're going to find it really difficult to pick the right social media channel. So I just like to take people back to basics before we do any of the fancy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen so many people out there make great quality content, but then they don't have a following. There's no one to see it.
Yeah.
Like I guess you're always trying to balance the two, aren't you?
And just I think a lot of the businesses that we speak to, how would I put this? But they are just overwhelmed because they're thinking, right, should I be doing a podcast? What should I be putting on social media? Should I be looking at, really going down on a YouTube channel? What do we do with our website? Do we do more PR? There's just so many things you can do. And I think you have to put things in place that are realistic for people. So like you say, if you're creating really beautiful content, but you're putting it out on the wrong channel because your audience aren't there, that's a complete waste of your time. Whereas if you think, okay, this is who my demographic is, this is what they're looking for, and this is where they tend to interact, and then you produce really beautiful content that fits that bill, it's just a much more pleasant and fulfilling experience, because there's nothing worse than you'll have experienced it because you've been producing content for a long time, and I definitely have, where you put so much work into something and you think, oh, this is going to be brilliant, and then you post it and it completely flops because maybe you've missed something. And I've got the knowledge to assess what I've done, but a lot of people out there are doing that, but then they don't know how to analyze what they've done right or what they've done wrong, which can be really
a lot of spray and pray marketing.
Yeah, which can be so soul destroying. So yeah, we try and help people avoid that by, and I always say to people, like the word strategy puts people off. I think people think, oh, here we go, I'm going to have this big long Word document, it's going to be really boring, and we'll put it in a folder somewhere and we'll never look at it again.
Do you sometimes think the term strategy is associated with inaction?
Yeah, for sure.
I get that sometimes. I think there's a lot of people out there that strategize but never do anything.
Yeah.
Yes. Sometimes it could be associated with procrastination.
Yeah.
But
again, it's that I think a lot of the way I always say to people, it doesn't have to be called a marketing strategy. You can call it whatever you want. You could call it, here's our marketing, I don't know, fun fest, ethos. Like literally, you can call it whatever. It's yours. Yeah. So like, if you don't want to call it a marketing strategy, don't call it that. If you want to call it a plan of attack or a plan of action or
marketing focus.
Yeah, don't get too obsessed with that word. Basically, what we're trying to do is figure out who you're trying to target, really get a clear picture of how can you help those people and what is it that you need to be saying to them, and where do you need to be saying it, because where do those people consume? Where do they make buying decisions? And then once you've got that, it's like, okay, now that we know this and we know what we're about as a company, let's put some content together that answers all of those things. It's, it doesn't have to be overly complicated. And I think because marketing is such a beast now in terms of all of the things that you can do, it's a bit of a blessing and a curse, because it can be hard to be decisive with what you do. And I think the amount of people I speak to who you go, right, what are you currently doing? And they go, right, we're on X, we're on LinkedIn, we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we're on Snapchat, we're doing emails, we've got a podcast coming. And I get overwhelmed. I'm like, whoa, okay. Because you can't do, most of the businesses that we're dealing with don't have the resource to do all of those things really well.
You're kind of describing us.
Sorry.
But actually, no, it's such a good point, because actually we had to like rein it all in, because we came to the conclusion it's better we can focus on a handful of platforms and doing really well.
Yeah.
Rather than just do a bit of everything.
It's so easy to burn out if you try and do too much at once. So like when we're advising businesses, we basically come away, we do like workshops, and then we will come away and put a recommended strategy together that's, these are the messages you should be putting out regularly, these are the channels to use, this is how frequent. We do a content calendar for them so that they can see actually how that looks in practical form as well.
Yeah.
But I think some of them I always pre-warn and say, don't be alarmed if there's not like as much activity as you're maybe expecting, because we need you to be doing these things consistently well before we can then jump to launching a podcast. Or because I think this kind of setting and doing something like this, although once you get into it, it's quite simple and easy to do, the setup and the actual initial doing it is intimidating for a lot of people. Even for me, we've got a podcast that we've had on the back burner for probably about 2.5 years now.
Amazing. What's it called?
Creative Juices.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
a risque
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah.
No, it's
Yeah,
good.
it's
It sounds good.
the concept of it in terms of how we'll pitch it and talk to people,
Yeah.
and it makes sense. But
What's the focus? Is it just on marketing?
it's really around creativity. It's based on, I had a bit of when we started the business. So my mum's a graphic designer by trade. That's her core skill. My background is more the copywriting and the strategy stuff. And we had a couple of clients that needed help with branding. So we did workshops, and me and mum did them together. And then I watched mum basically create these beautiful brands from nothing. And I went into this like professional identity crisis because I just felt like my role was really boring. I didn't feel like I'd contributed. And I was having a conversation with my mum, and I write the strategies up, and then mum will build a brand around that. And she said, Hannah, I think what you're forgetting is that the words that you put together are what fueled me creating that. If you hadn't written those words, I wouldn't have got to that. So I had this real like sense of I'm not very creative, and what I'm doing is a bit more boring. And obviously that I was overwhelmed starting a business in the beginning of a pandemic. And we just started having conversations around, I think there are a lot of people out there where the word creativity means certain things to people. And actually, we've all got a creativeness in us. Like for me, accountants are really creative because some of the things my accountant says, I'm like, I've got no idea what you just said, but it sounds great. And we're all creative in different ways. I think, so it will be conversations with people of all areas. Just talking about, first memories of being creative. What does being creative mean to you? And there's a lot of people out there who may not do a traditionally creative job, but they might have a really creative hobby that we don't know about. I think, I just think, open conversations about what creativity actually is to people.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, if it's okay, can I just delve into what it's like working with your mother? Because I've actually got my father. He was like employee number 2.
Okay.
And it's I mean, there's definitely pros and cons. What do you call your mother at work?
Mum.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I call my dad son at work, but then sometimes I slip up and call him dad. But,
So we this is a really interesting. When we started the business, we got all sorts of advice. I was having some personal coaching. We were also having some coaching together because we'd never worked together before. It's a really personal relationship, as you'll know, with your dad. Me and my mum have a really good relationship. So not so much from my side, but there was quite a bit of fear from my mum's perspective of what if something happens? What if we end up falling out? So it's, for me, it's been a real privilege. Yes, it's challenging, and we can get onto that in a minute. But overall, for me, it's very rare, I think, that actually, let's take as a parent, you get to see your child's career unfold firsthand. It's very rare that you actually get to see that. You'll hear about it because if you're the kind of family that talks about things, your kids will be like, oh, I've had a bad day, or this has happened, or this is going really well. And you'll know what's going on, but you won't get to see it firsthand. You won't get to see your child in action, for want of a better phrase. And it's the same for children. It's very rare that you see mum and dad go to work. And my mum's travelled a lot with her job. So I used to see her getting on and off planes, always looking really glam and thinking, gosh, she got the best job ever. But I never actually saw her up close doing the job. Whereas over the last 3.5 years, there's been some real moments where I've just watched my mum deliver a brand and see how happy the client is and see how in her element she is. And that's really special. I think it's just been an amazing experience to watch each other develop, and we've got to know each other better. So yes, you'd think mother and daughter, we can't possibly know each other any better, but I've got to know my mum so much better as just a woman, and I've got to know her so much better as a professional. Like, it's just, I've got to know my mum so much better over the last 3.5 years. And sometimes we don't agree.
What do you say the pros and cons are of working with a family member?
I think the pros are the level of trust is much higher than it would be if you were partnering with a previous colleague or a friend. That there's not anybody I trust more than my parents and my brother. So I think that's a pro. I think this is sort of a pro and a con, but you can be more unfiltered because you're used to having open, unfiltered conversations with your family. Well, I certainly am. That's the kind of family that we are. But then at the same point, that can also cause a problem because you're constantly flipping between personal and professional relationship, which can be hard. And I think it's, no one has my back more than my mum or my dad. My dad would have my back. Sorry, Dad. But,
But in your business.
Yeah, like nobody. Our co-director, Paul, would be a very close second, but she's my mum. So she's going to advocate for me like nobody else. And the same for me. I'm going to advocate for her like nobody else. So I think you've got that. It's just a different level of belief in each other.
Who is Paul, your co-director?
Who is Paul Gordon? Yeah. So Paul is, where do I start with Paul? Paul was actually my manager in a previous job. So me and Paul used to work for a company that was previously known as ACS Office Solutions.
I've heard of
But
them,
they've just been acquired and are now part of the Beckler Group. So Paul was the marketing manager at ACS and I was the marketing assistant. And we worked together there for 4.5 years. Became really good friends. We basically worked in like a really small glass office within the office. And I remember when I first started working with him, I thought this is going to go one of two ways. We're going to either drive each other mad because it's such a small office, or we'll really get on and this will be great. And yeah, we've been friends for 10 years. Again, always supported each other even when we left that business and went into other roles. And then the beginning of our second year, Paul wasn't enjoying his current role. And we were at a point where we were just at capacity. And I, in particular, just had no room for growth. Like if any more business had come in, it would have broken me. And Paul is a multi-skilled marketer again. So Paul's actually a graphic designer, but has had a career that's enabled him to do, he's done sales, he's done marketing management, he's really technical on the web design side of things. He's a very multi-skilled person. And yeah, we got to the point where we were like, do you want to come and work with us? And I think from both sides, it was like, yeah, I'll snap your hand off.
So you started the agency with your mother and then Paul joined afterwards.
Yeah, so okay. Paul was technically employee number one after me and Mum, which for me is really is quite special because my first marketing job after university was with Paul.
Oh, excellent.
And now he's a co-director in our agency. So yeah, it's quite a...
And is your mother also a director?
Yeah, me, Mum and Paul. So Paul's the marketing director.
Oh, excellent.
He was made a shareholder last year. Just because his impact on the business has been huge. And long term, my mum is in her early 60s. Sorry, Mum, she won't mind me saying that. And will gradually over the next few years want to take a little bit of a step back and enjoy downtime with my dad. I've got a brother who lives in New Zealand, so travel over there a bit more. We decided very early on that I don't want to run the business on my own. And second to my family, there's nobody other than Paul who is right for that role and who I would trust to be like my right arm. Mum will still be involved in the business long term, but as Mum takes a step back, it'll be myself and Paul running it.
Okay, excellent. I mean, there's something I wanted to cover earlier on in this podcast, but this has been very interesting. It was actually what drove you to start your business? Because that's the timing's very interesting, isn't it?
Terrible timing. Yeah.
I'm assuming the reasons for doing it weren't COVID related. COVID was just an accident, or
COVID was a surprise. Yeah,
unforeseen.
Yeah, for sure. So I worked prior to the agency. The last 10 years I've spent working my way up from marketing assistant. And then in my last role before we started the business, I was head of UK marketing for an international company. So I had a team. I was responsible for the UK content. And that was, quite a big responsibility. But I'd got to the point where it can be, and I'm only speaking from personal experience, but I found it quite frustrating at times being an in-house marketer because I'm very driven. I always want to improve things in a constructive way. I'm not from a negative sense, but I always want to move things forward. And I just found myself constantly going with new forward-thinking ideas. When new social media was coming out, I wanted to try it and trying to get things to be a bit more strategic, because lots of businesses operate in marketing chaos. And it's so much, it can be really soul destroying when you're constantly putting ideas forward and the team that you're working with or the leadership that you're working with just don't value it. And I just got increasingly frustrated and got to a point where I thought, you know what, I'd really like to do this for businesses that actually want to improve their marketing. And then my mum had been made redundant after being with an organisation for nearly 20 years and had gone into like consultancy and was working by herself and was really not enjoying being on her own. And we just got chatting, I think, over a bottle of wine one night. And I was like, you're really good at the creative stuff. I'm really good at the more strategic stuff and the planning and the content. And we just sort of had this look, and she was like, are you? I was like, yeah, I think I am suggesting that why don't we do something? And then we put it on the back burner for quite a while, because mum was a bit anxious about what it would do to our relationship. And then we decided, right, come on, no, let's just go for it. So we spent, before setting the business up, we spent about 6 months developing a business plan, developing the brand, and just getting everything set up basically. And then I left that secure job, and 27th of March we set the business up, 2020. So my memory of it is that I remembered Boris announcing the first lockdown when he got up on that, the what's it called, the podium, and announced, lectern, that's the word I was looking for. So I just remember him announcing that we were going into lockdown, and that was the day we'd got the paperwork from Companies House. And I was just like, what have we done? I was also, for context, I was going through a breakup in a personal relationship. So I'd got a lot going on, and then the world seemed to be ending. So it just felt like colossally bad timing. But yeah, I don't really know. I cried a lot for that first week and panicked. Like my natural default is to worry. So I panicked quite a lot and thought, what are we going to do? We actually had a client lined up.
Okay.
Someone that I've known for a little while in the commercial furniture space. And the impact of the pandemic for them, they had to furlough everyone pretty much immediately. So we went from having a client lined up to having nothing. And everyone was in a complete panic, weren't they? Nobody knew it was like nothing we've ever experienced before. But I panicked, and thankfully, again, I had my mum at my side, and I've got the kind of relationship with my mum where mum is very reassuring to me, and my mum is the opposite of me. She's cool, calm and collected. She doesn't panic. And she just kept saying, it's going to be fine. We're good at what we do. We stick to the plan. Now we go into how can we help mode. It wasn't about how much money can we make. It wasn't about even charging people. It was just, let us help you. Because it was crisis mode. And yeah, I just woke up one morning after a few days of panicking, and I thought, right, you're good at what you do. You're good at talking to people. You've got a really good network, and just took my mum's advice, and it was like, right, how can we help? And then I don't really know how we got, it's nearly 4 years later. I feel like I've blinked and got a lot more grey hairs.
How do you think people's marketing habits changed during COVID? Or were you not in a position to observe that?
I think they did change. I think the initial reaction is stop communicating,
stop doing everything.
Yeah, there was definitely a panic in the air around what do we say, because it was a period where it felt really inappropriate to be selling to people, but at the same time, people needed to make money. People's business, that it was that really horrible position of, I need to sell because my business still needs to operate.
Yeah,
but I don't feel right selling to people at the moment because people are in major distress, and this is really, nobody really knows what's going on. And so for me, a lot of the conversations we had with people, I had lots of phone calls and Zoom calls with people just asking for advice. And my response was, don't stop communicating. It's just about changing what you're saying. Yeah. So my advice to a lot of businesses in that time was, you need to make your content about advice, and the sales will come. Because if people really need your help, we grew the business in that first year. We went from 0 to a revenue that meant I could still pay my mortgage, meant that mum could still pay her bills, and I think that was because our tactic was advise rather than selling what we do. But yeah, I think there was a major panic from people around stop, don't say anything. And that's what happens in crisis. Marketing goes first. I mean, you've talked about this with other people on the podcast, but
well, my philosophy's always been do what everyone else isn't doing. So like,
yeah, for sure. I like that.
We were 7 years old when COVID hit, and I could see everyone like cutting back on everything, slowing down, and my automatic instinct is quadruple our efforts.
Yeah, I love that.
And because of a couple of things. Firstly, marketing gets a lot cheaper. When everyone isn't doing it, like
so
pay-per-click, or all the opportunities around it, the various suppliers that we're using.
Yeah.
That, although we've never gone back to supplier and asked for a discount or anything, I don't believe in that. But, but there were many more opportunities at that point. So, and I think that since then, like, COVID was probably a pretty substantial changing point for us in terms of the way we market. Like, obviously we didn't do anything at this level before. But it's I think then just generally the cost of living crisis, the even what's going on now, we're not quite in a recession anymore, or sorry, we never were, not since 2008. But I do think the economy's still very challenging. Like at the moment, I think insolvencies are back to their 2008 levels,
right? Okay.
For businesses. So, and it's because of all the businesses that had access to cheap funding during COVID, and now they've got to refinance and they can't afford that. And I do actually think that I do think now is the time to actually just reach out to as many people as possible.
Yeah, for sure. I think what happened as well, which is really important, is during the pandemic, the barrier for people massively came down. So a lot of people had time to take stock. And I don't just mean as individuals, but as businesses. I had lots of conversations with business owners in that period where they were like, obviously they're working from home more. There was a lot more time to reflect because you couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't do the things you would normally do. And there was a lot around, we've not been doing this very well for a long time. So a lot of businesses had a little reset because they had the opportunity to think. It wasn't the normal rat race. And I think that is really important. And I think that has done a lot of businesses a lot of good. And I think just generally, if we look at the content we see now versus the content we would have seen 5 years ago, it's just a lot more unfiltered. And I think that would have happened anyway, but I do think that the pandemic fast forwarded that process, Zoom calls from your house, where people, you remember the news guy when his child runs in and the lady runs in to grab the kid, when that video came out, everyone thought it was hysterical. But if that came out now, it'd be quite normal, I think we've just lots of people have just relaxed a bit, which I think has opened the door for businesses who wouldn't previously have been brave enough to do a podcast or to put video content out of their team having fun in the office, are now doing things like that, which I think is great.
Absolutely. So you kind of described your first week in business, which involved a lot of worrying.
Lots of crying, lots of worrying.
What did you do after that? What was your first month like? I mean, what actions did you take in that first month? Loads
of networking. I did so much networking. I joined BNI.
Okay.
We became a member of the chamber quite quickly, and I knew the chamber team quite well. So I was going to like every chamber Zoom networking that I could. I was just reaching out to people to have like catch ups, and I was just like, let's catch up. And it was, I think because we announced the launch of the business, and I've got quite a strong network locally just from the jobs I've had previously, and people wanted to help us. So it was just lots of back and forth conversations with different business people. And in all honesty, I can't remember. It was such a blur because I was going through so much personally as well. I can't actually remember. I think our first client came through BNI.
Okay.
And until probably 2 months ago, they were still a client. And I think then our second client also came through BNI. And then we started to get a few through my networking and just people who had known of me for years and were like, I'll give you a shot, Hannah. Like, I'll let you have a go at this. And then a lot of it was word of mouth from people. People had good experiences. between myself and Mum, we've also got quite a good international network just because of the businesses that we've worked for. So we then got a couple of slightly bigger opportunities, and there was a turning point for us. I think it was about 4 or 5 months into the business where we an old connection of mine from the office industry, the sort of serviced office industry, reached out and said, "Oh, I don't know if you know of any good marketing agencies, do you?" Wink, wink. And I was like, "No, can't think of any, sorry." So I went and met her for a coffee, had a chat, and basically their brand was, I think at the time, about 15 years old. I may have got that number wrong, but it was an old established brand, and they were looking at refreshing it. And this is quite an interesting story. So she said, "Look, I want to give you and your mum a shot. I've always really valued you. I've always thought you really good at what you do. Let's have a go." So we got the opportunity to pitch for the work, and then ongoing support in terms of like social media management and all of that. But at the same time, Paul, who is now my co-director, wasn't working for the business, and that person had also reached out to Paul at the agency that he was working at, because
right.
it was me and Paul that she'd worked with before at ACS. So she reached out to Paul as well. So then all of a sudden, me and Paul, who's one of my closest friends, are in competition for this piece of work. So we pitched and we went through a process of a couple of meetings, and honestly, to my complete shock, we got the work, and that doubled our monthly turnover overnight. And was just a huge, I think, boost for me and Mum, because it was a business that I'd valued for a long time and I'd admired, and particularly this lady I'm referencing, I admired her, had believed in us and thought we were the right people. That gave me and Mum a huge confidence boost, and that was a real turning point, I think, in the first year.
Do you feel that there was an element of imposter syndrome before you did that? Okay.
Huge. I'd come out, I think in my previous role as well, I'd been in an environment where I'm vocal as a person, and I've never been scared of saying what I think, even if it might not be what people want to hear. So I'd got to a point in my previous role where I'd sensed that people didn't really want me to speak up. Yeah. So I started to become a bit quieter. And so it took me a little while. You've also got to go from being employed to being your own boss, which is another thing. But I had to get my confidence, just my general confidence back. So I think, like I say, when this business gave us the green light to help them with their rebrand, it felt like they'd put huge trust in us. So for me, that was a real. It was sort of a, yeah, come on, you can do this, and you can do this with some serious businesses. And then it feels like the latter half of that year was just a bit of a blur. But then going into the second year when Paul joined the business, that we started our second year with just me and Mum. Yeah. And Paul joined the business, and then by the end of the year there were 6 of us. So
oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, that was a fast year.
Are the other 3 members like on your payroll? Are they self-employed?
Yeah, so they were on our payroll. So we've got an apprentice, we had a graphic designer, and an account manager.
Oh, excellent.
And then we've also got a team of freelancers that support. So we've had people come in and people go. The numbers of who's in the team has slightly dropped again, just because we've had a few people that haven't quite worked out.
And how many businesses do you work with at the moment?
Do you know, I don't actually know that number off the top of my head. It's probably like 50, 60.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do you do for all of them? Like, do you have like one package or?
No. So we don't actually, and this is something that we've talked about. I'm not sure whether this will be the case forever, but we don't have set packages.
Okay.
So essentially what we've done for all of them is some form of marketing strategy exercise, whether it's we've gone in and helped them revise one that they've got, or we've gone in and helped them create one from scratch. Some of them who've come to us more from a branding perspective, we've done the same, but a branding strategy. And then others, we get some situations where people need like video content creating, and at the moment we would outsource that to a team. But then we'll create a strategy around, right, how are you going to use that video? Because again, you create this beautiful piece of content, but then you've got to really work it and milk it. So the majority of the work that we're doing is a combination of social media management, marketing strategy, and I was saying to Ellie, your colleague beforehand, that we're starting to do a lot more around personal branding as well. So actually going into businesses and doing workshops with their team around how to use LinkedIn better and how to elevate your brand on your LinkedIn.
Why is that important for businesses that their teams have a good personal brand?
Yeah, good golden question. Not everyone thinks it is a good thing, which is really interesting. But from my perspective, the people in your business are your most valuable marketing asset, because they are a physical representation of your business. So if they go to a meeting, how are they interacting with the client or the potential client? If they let someone into the building, how are they doing that? Is it a pleasant experience? These people are a huge part of the brand and the reputation that your business has.
I think you've got to be quite confident in your people strategy to do that, because
Yeah.
pros, it means they can connect with more people,
Yep.
and then spread the word. Cons, it's a lot easier for them to get a job.
Yeah, I think I've had more recently, actually, I've had a lot more sort of managing directors who I've been talking to about this say to me, but I'm just making it easier for them to be poached. And my answer to that, rightly or wrongly, is if you're worried that your team are going to get poached, there's a chance you're not looking after them properly, because you shouldn't be worried about that, in my opinion. And again, that some people might think that's really naive, but I'm not worried about my team being poached because I look after them. And if they're to leave my business, I want them to leave in a position where they can go on to their next step. I don't want to hold people back. And I'm not naive to the fact that as much as I would love our current team to be with us forever, that's highly unlikely to happen.
Well, I think that's a good point. And the other side is the business has got to be bigger than any one person. And ultimately, it's about if you've got good processes and systems in the business, if you've got a culture where you're continuously training other people, then it's always sad to lose a team member, but then it doesn't have to be critical or terminal. But the other side is, it makes people there's Indeed, isn't there? There's so many other, if people want to move, they can. I don't think a personal brand is. So when I said it earlier, that was just me playing devil's advocate,
absolutely,
because it's something I do hear a lot. But actually, my personal thought is trying to shield people from the opportunities that are out there is impossible in today's climate, because they will, if they don't learn about the opportunities on LinkedIn, they'll learn about them somewhere else. They'll have a friend or a family friend they're talking to and learn that way. So
it's risk versus reward, isn't it? I think if you can really empower your team to improve their personal brands to benefit the business as well, there's no shying away from the fact that this is to benefit the business, but particularly with sales teams, it's also in their best interest, because the more you sell, the more commission you get paid, all of that lovely stuff. And actually, if someone in your team or a selection of people in your team do really successfully build personal brands, in the time that is having an impact, your business will benefit. And if there comes a time where actually that person decides to leave, you've at least reaped the rewards of their personal brand for that time. If they never developed it, you'd never reap the rewards. So I think it's trying to look like big picture, longer term. And my attitude to it is you're better to try it than not try it at all and never actually see what the rewards could be. Because with a platform like LinkedIn, as an example, I've done so many tests with this with clients, but if you post something on your business page of, say, Ellie doing a video, but you post it on the business page, it will get a certain amount of reach. If Ellie posted that exact same video on her personal profile, it will get minimum 10 times the reach. Maybe not 10 times the engagement, but it will reach far more people, because ultimately LinkedIn is designed as a platform to connect individuals. So the algorithm prefers content from personal profiles.
Well, it's interesting that you're talking about LinkedIn, because there's been some pretty substantial changes to the platform or the algorithm over the last 2 months maybe. So what do you think? I mean, could you summarize them just for anyone that's watching this?
I probably, in terms of the algorithm side of things, I think is still a dark art to a lot of us that are actually marketers. So for me, the algorithm is looking for things like not overly tagging people, which people think is really really good. You see it all the time. People ask a question and then there's like 15 people tagged, and the algorithm
we had
can
this
spot that a
conversation.
mile off.
Me and Ellie were debating this last night.
Ellie's
I was
nodding
like,
in the background.
it was, hey, tag all these people in the post, and I was like, no.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, tag some people in the post. And
yeah, you have to be you just have to be careful, because the algorithm picks that up as you're spamming people.
Yes.
Because if it's one or two people and it clearly flows, then the algorithm is smarter than we are. So it knows what we're doing. Things like just keeping your hashtags to a minimum. You've now got these, like, it's doing auto captions on videos. You've got things like videos with thumbnails perform better than videos without thumbnails, because that's something that the algorithm looks for. Like, essentially with any social media platform, the algorithms are there to get you to basically utilize as much of the platform as possible and as well as possible. I think in terms of some of the changes on LinkedIn, the one for me that gave me the most sort of difficulty was when they introduced the auto captions on videos. And it seems a really small thing, but I'd spent so long trying to find a captioning tool that I liked, that did it the way I like to do things, that made it easy for me to edit the text, etc., etc. And then LinkedIn just started putting these captions on, and then when new elements get introduced, they don't always brief the users very well, for want of a better phrase. So it was, I think, I like the way LinkedIn has developed, and I don't have a lot of bad words to say about LinkedIn. I think with some of the other social media platforms, I think we've got some real problems ahead. I think, things like Mark Zuckerberg creating Threads, I mean, just a complete waste of time, in my opinion. And it's just a duplication of something that already exists. It's just more.
What are Threads?
So Threads is Mark Zuckerberg's version of Twitter. So this is the whole Zuckerberg-Musk rift. So obviously with Meta owning Instagram, basically what has happened is everyone who's got an Instagram account now has a Threads account. Whether you choose to use it or not is up to you. But they've all sort of auto-generated everyone a Threads number. I sort of logged in and had a look, and it is quite literally their version of Twitter, or what is now known as X. And I straight away sort of went onto LinkedIn and had a bit of a rant, because for me, as somebody who's working in the space and has to manage people's social media, I was getting calls from clients going, can we set up a Threads account? What should we be posting on Threads? And, you get this real, like, almost like magpie shiny new toy syndrome. And I have no problem with new launches for social media, but do something different. Don't just produce something that's going to generate more noise. Like, we're already so overstimulated as people, and particularly when it comes to social media and digital content, people just don't know what to do with themselves. People are getting addicted, and I just thought it was not a particularly ethical thing to do. I think it was just out of pure spite for, in a big rivalry. So I find changes like that in social media, I find quite frustrating. And I think with things like TikTok, completely, blowing everyone out of the water a few years ago, you've had platforms like Instagram have panicked, and they've tried to switch what they want their users to do, because TikTok's doing really well. Okay, we need to do what TikTok are doing. So you've now got a platform like Instagram that, in my opinion, is just in a complete state of flux, because you've got people who spent years building high followings, big profiles, and really engaged audiences. And because there's been so many changes in the algorithm in the last 12 months, nobody knows what's working. And it's just, it's just a fascinating, like, battle for attention with social media nowadays, which I think is hard enough to manage when you're actually a marketing professional. So for the businesses we deal with, it's no surprise that people get overwhelmed.
I definitely like what LinkedIn's done. Like, what we found after the algorithm changes is, like, our exposure, our impressions, our likes, interactions, like, doubled or tripled. But then, because before we were creating high quality content, and then someone could just post a picture of their cat and outperform us. So LinkedIn's actually, dealt with that, and it's really reassuring, refreshing, and it's rationing the content. It's like,
absolutely. I think there is also, like, I've always said to people, I think it's great that LinkedIn have done that and tackled that, because they have been getting a lot of stick for that, you see all of this, it's the business Facebook, it's this, it's that.
Mm.
One thing I would say though, as individuals, like we do have an element of control over what we're seeing. So if you're seeing things in your feed that you don't like, unfollow, remove it from your feed. If you're getting loads of ads that aren't relevant, click the 3 dots and remove the ad from your feed, because all of that feedback to LinkedIn will help make your feed better. So we do have an element of control, and I often say to people, you're seeing what you've interacted with.
Yeah,
it's reflecting back at you what you've interacted with. So you need to maybe take a look at who you're following, or maybe don't just like something if you don't really like it, because a lot of people do that. They think, oh, I like it, and then their network will see me. And it's, you do have to think about how you're interacting on the platform does contribute to what you see. And I don't think a lot of people think of it that way.
No, that definitely makes sense. Okay, that's amazing. What do you think, like, just going back to your team a little bit, why do you want to build a team?
Ooh, good question.
Sometimes it's easier just being yourself, working by yourself, or with your mother, or...
Yeah, I think me and Mum would have probably driven each other mad if it was just the two of us. I think our relationship needs more people around us, number one, because you need that separation as the team has grown.
Almost like a moderator, or...
Yeah, absolutely. And just...
or a medium.
Yeah, just the fact that now that there's more people in the team and we're busier, it's actually very rare that me and Mum are working on a project together, because we have to divide and conquer. We can't be everywhere together. Whereas the first 12 months we did everything together, and we were like, the Brady duo, and both of our names, obviously I'm Hannah, my mum's called Helen, and we had one client in particular that started to call us H squared. And then that caught on. So everyone sort of expected this duo, mother and daughter. But for me, I think the team side of things, I don't operate very well as a lone wolf. Like I like my own company. As I've got older, I've learned to really enjoy time by myself. But continuously, I need people. I thrive around people, and I'm better at my job when I'm around people, and people are a big source of inspiration for me. I've always been just generally fascinated with how people behave. So selfishly, I need people around me. And I think that although I wouldn't have said, if you'd have asked me right at the beginning how many people you have in year 4, I wouldn't have had a clue. I'd have said, I don't know, 2 or 3. I wouldn't have thought we'd be where we are. But I've always been into like sport and team sport, and just more comfortable in a team environment. And I think my mum is the same. And it evolved. We got bigger work. We got more work that actually we found wasn't as easy to facilitate with freelancers as it would be if someone was sat next to us. I'm also a huge fan of the office environment, and having an office where you come to work and they're not just your colleagues, but you're sort of helping each other through life. As a team, we've all got all sorts going on. And
are you in 9 to 5 or more or less every single day?
Yeah, we're a bit old school, which surprises people.
Us too. Yeah, we've I have this conversation so many times. People like hybrid working, work from home, and it's...
I'm not a fan.
I mean, to be fair, we don't always get it right here, in the sense that, like, sometimes people do talk about how difficult it can be to concentrate. But the other side is we have put a lot of measures in place to make sure that we've created a nice, quiet environment. But you can't be just being able to overhear a conversation and absorb information just through osmosis.
Yeah. It's difficult. I didn't mean to cut over you there.
No,
but it's difficult because I think, you go through the pandemic. You have people come in for interviews now, and obviously people's demands now versus 5 years ago are very different, just because of the flexibility that we've been forced to have and to offer. But our attitude to it is that we do offer flexible working, but it's not in a structure that's like, right, you're in the office 3 days a week and you're at home 2 days a week. Our flexible working is, if you have got a project that you don't feel you're going to get done very well in the office because you need to just get your head down and concentrate, you come and tell me and just say, Hannah, can I work from home tomorrow? I really need to get my head down on this copy and I think I'll do it better from home. And, that's communicated continuously and very clearly with the team. but they don't do it very often, surprisingly. But we model that behavior as directors. If I need to go and get my head down, I'll say, guys, I'm going to nip out for a few hours, but they're empowered to do that as well. Or if they need to go, they've got something being delivered and they need to work from home for the morning, not a problem. It's just, it's more case by case basis, because actually we're a creative business and far better work is done creatively when you're with each other. And if one of us is struggling with something and the other person overhears, it's really nice for someone to be able to go, have you thought about doing this? Which you have to construct that when you're remote. You have to go, can we have a Teams call, or can we... that's
what I found.
But I think it surprises people, I think people see me as an example and they think, relatively young business owner in marketing, it's a creative industry, they must have really flexible work. People assume. So then when I say, oh, no, we're Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, I think people are like, oh, okay. But it works for us. It makes recruitment a bit harder. But...
do you and your team have like families, like children and stuff?
So Paul's got 2 children.
Okay.
Some of the freelancers have got children. But the predominant group of it, obviously mum's got children. But the bulk of the team, no. So Delia, our apprentice, is about to turn 21. She's not got a family yet. And then Lois, our one of our account managers, she's similar age to me, but no children at the moment.
I guess, so it may, I mean, I know when people do have kids, like the flexibility is even more important, really, isn't it? And
of course,
but and as long as it's there for the right reasons, definitely. But that's really cool. And how would you describe your office environment? Actually, where is your office?
We're based, and we're in the old granary, which is best way to describe it. If you're driving past Delapre Abbey, and Delapre Abbey's on your right hand side, keep going and you get to the crossroads where you've got the Asda.
Oh yeah.
And you keep going a little bit more and there's a big red brick building on your right. Yeah, we're in there.
Opposite Ruby's Takeaway or something.
Yeah. And the Pomfret Arms, which is a great little pub. So we're in there. Aesthetically, it's really lovely. There's a lot of exposed brick and beams, and it's very, typical of an agency somewhere.
Do you have a glass central office?
No.
Right.
We haven't got any like moss on the walls or anything like that. But it's aesthetically, it's quite typical of what you would envisage potentially for a marketing agency. In terms of the vibe, it's this sounds really cheesy, but it's a very like family. Like we're quite close knit as a team, and we all know what's going on in each other's lives. And everyone's in the morning, need a cuppa. Like there's always music on, always, which can be interesting. We're currently discussing. You can basically build interactive playlists on Spotify now, can't you? So like I could contribute a few songs, you could contribute a few songs, and you can build a bespoke. So we're looking at building an office playlist because I tend to play the same stuff all the time, and they get a bit fed up. But always music on. We have quite a flow of like visitors.
I was going to say our playlist is usually HMRC hold music.
Oh really? Yeah. I don't think we could quite. We listen to a lot of Capital Chill is a firm favourite because it's quite just background. If Paul and Lois let loose, there's a lot more like R&B that goes on.
And then you've got clients coming in to join you.
Yeah, we do. Increasingly, we've got more and more people coming in. We've also got a couple of people who rent desks from us. And quite often, a lot of our clients that are more local, the people we engage with work from home. So very often I'll say to them, if you ever need a change of scenery, just come and work from the office. So some of our clients come and work from the office for a day. It's very much, if you were to walk into our office, you're going to get offered a hot drink. You're going to get a warm welcome. And most people, I think, leave, feeling like, they're welcome anytime. It's a very open, if it was a residential property, like the door's always open, basically. So it's quite informal, I would say.
Oh, that's really good. And, I mean, that it sounds like a good place to work. Have you got space to grow into? I mean, you mentioned you rent some desks out, so if you've got to expand your team. Yeah,
so at the moment, this is a bit of conversation for us that we're having. We're currently advertising 3 roles. So we will probably be, if we fill all those 3 roles in the office we're in, we'll probably be at capacity.
What are the roles?
So we've got essentially another account management role. We've got a role for a videographer, someone who we really want to try and build the audio visual arm of the business in-house, and then a graphic design role, full-time graphic designer. So if those people come in, we'll be at capacity. So we're currently looking at options for the next step. But I find it quite hard in Northampton. I find that there's all of the good spaces are taken. So we're a little bit limited for options at the minute. We'll find somewhere, but we've got about 18 months left where we are. So we've got some time. We might have to do a bit more of the sort of people in and out of the office if it does get too chaotic, because people do need to be able to concentrate.
Yeah, that's our challenge as well, because like the offices on either side, we got 3 together, which you've seen, and then if someone leaves in that office, I'm gonna have to cut a door into this wall. But I don't know if that's a load bearing or not. Obviously, we'll find out first. But or the other side, there's actually a connecting door over there anyway. But the person in there's just had a mural painted, and she doesn't want to leave.
Oh, okay, yeah, she's now like settled in there.
Yeah, and I was like, we can paint a mural in your new office.
But
but you know what? It was when we first got this office. We were way too small as a business for it. We had like 3 together, whereas before we only had one smaller office, and there's like 4 of us in this office that's really designed for probably 12 people. And then now we're at about 9 people, and then we've got a good meeting room here. So sometimes I keep talking to clients about this, and they're like, oh, there's this office available, but you know, it's too big for us, we don't need it right now. But like, you've got growth plans, you do want to add people to the team. When you do actually need an office, like especially Northampton, as you said, like there's Northampton's like, it's one of those places where I think people just want to set up businesses because it's so easy to get north, get to the north, get to Birmingham, get to London.
I think we've got something like, wasn't it the record? Northampton holds one of the records for the amount of new businesses that were started last year. It's a very good area for, like you said, for like new business.
It is. I read an article where it was about the best. It was talking about that it was the best place to start a small business outside of London.
Makes sense, doesn't it? Because of where, like you say, where it's located.
Yeah, connectivity. So but the challenge with that is office space is always at a premium.
We I think the way you guys have done it here, like you say, you were too small for the space initially, is the way to do it. It's been the opposite for us. Our office prior to where we are now, we were in the same building but in a really small, probably no bigger than this room that we're in. Okay. But there was 4 of us working in here, so it was like it was too much. We were so crowded. So we've moved due to like necessity. We've got to the point where we've maxed out the space and then had to move. And I think realistically, that's probably going to happen again. But like I say, we'll have to, as a leadership team, we'll just have to have a look at, is everyone okay? Because if people are struggling to concentrate, then we probably will integrate something that's a bit more bit more rotated around who's in the office, just until we get a bigger space, and then we would go back to. We're looking at developing the stables up at Delapre, to the right hand side of the building. So we have put ourselves forward for one of those spaces. And there's a few options. I mean, Delapre would be amazing. We spend a lot of time there anyway. Not a bad place to base your business. But there's options, but it's it's a balancing act, isn't it? I think with that sort of stuff.
What do you think the challenges are with building a team? Because it's not always roses,
where
is
do you
it?
start? No, it's not. It's really not always roses. This is the thing I found hardest about starting a business. You know, I'm by no means, I was saying to Ellie again before we started, I am by no means a ready-made businesswoman. Like, I've had to really learn how you build a business. Like, I'm a marketer that started a business. And for me, the people side of things, I am inherently like a believer in people.
Okay.
And my natural default is to see the good. Even when there's clearly red flags, I'm like, but I give people too many chances sometimes. And even prior to the business, I would have done that. So I've had to really learn over the last couple of years while we've been hiring to, if something's not working, you need to do something about it quickly. And for me, I think the challenge is that demands of people are quite high, particularly people who, younger people who are coming into the workplace who don't yet have any experience are living in a world where actually I feel some of the demands are unrealistic. If I look back at, I know cost of living and all of those things, but you have to earn your stripes, in my opinion. I don't think that should ever go. When people are coming in and they want to work permanently from home from day one, I'm like, no, we need to get to know you. You need to get to know us. We're not actually going to get a true feeling for each other if you spend most of your time at home. And particularly in the junior roles, you will not learn by osmosis, which is so essential in a workplace. So I found the demands of people applying for jobs quite difficult. I found that quite, I've had to get my head around that a little bit.
It's mad. It's
yeah.
I've always taken the view, if you really don't want to come and spend time with your colleagues, then go find a job with colleagues where you do want to spend time with them, because life's too short.
Yeah.
But it's
tricky. I mean, we're trying to build a big priority for myself and Mum, and also for Paul, is we've all worked in workplaces. We've had a mixture of experiences. I've worked in some workplaces. ACS is a really good example where it was fantastic. Like I could be myself. I could hone my skills. I was given free rein to try different things. And if they didn't work, it was okay. Yes, there were frustrations like there are in every job, but that was a workplace where I just was like, yeah, this is a good environment to be in. And then I went and worked in other businesses where I was like, this is horrendous. I'd had a really good experience quite young. And then I had some other, good experiences. But we all said at the start, me and Mum particularly, we want to build something where people enjoy coming to work. Yes, we do a good job, and yes, we work hard, but I want people to proudly work for the Brady Creative, and I want it to be an aspirational place to work. So I want young people who are studying marketing to think, I'd love to work for the Brady Creative one day, not just because we do great work, but because it's a workplace where you're valued as a person. And, if you're going through something, we've got you back. It's not just about, have you done all your tasks today? Because I just think there is more to life than work. And yes, we're trying to build a professional business that does well, but I also really care about the well-being of the people. But in terms of like, I went off on a bit of a tangent there, but we've had a few instances recently where we've hired somebody and we've thought, yes, this is brilliant. You feel like you go quite a few steps forward, and then you're not going to know a person until they come into the business, and then you'll start to see really who they are. And we had one recently where it didn't work out. And for me, it was a real blow. Because I felt like we'd gone really quite far forward as a business. And I thought, really skilled person, really talented.
Why didn't it work out?
Real character clash.
A cultural clash.
Yeah. Cultural clash, which, again, I would say I spotted quite early on. So did Mum and Paul. But we wanted to give it a go because we felt like, we needed this skill set in the team. And then also I just think... this individual had predominantly worked as a freelancer all of their life and really didn't adapt very well to being the structure of being employed. So it just didn't work, and we had to make a decision. But for me, it was a real, I don't know why, it just really knocked me for a few days. And sometimes when people exit your business, it doesn't quite go to plan, and it doesn't, like we said earlier, you don't want it to be, you want it to be as, calm and collected and as positive as possible. But that doesn't always happen. That's not, sometimes things don't go to plan. And so that's been difficult. And I just think I had a little rant on LinkedIn recently about the quality of CVs that come through.
Last year it was
really
almost
difficult.
impossible, but now it seems to be improving from what I've seen.
It's quite, I think I've only been on this side of the fence in terms of recruiting for a few years. I didn't hire the people that were in my teams. So it's just been eye-opening, I think. And I'm one of these people, I had to really work on this, but because I'm very conscientious, I've had to learn running a business that you can't expect everyone to do things the way that you do things. You have to understand that we're all different and we all do things differently, and your way isn't the best way for everybody. And, if somebody doesn't do something or apply a level of quality to something, then they're not, just let it go. They're not for your business, whereas I find it quite frustrating when people apply for jobs and there's clearly minimal effort been put in. But I appreciate it's looking for a job is like a full-time job in itself, isn't it? So, but yeah, hiring and building the right team has been the hardest thing so far. Because it's so, when you're in a small business, and you'll know this with the size of business that you've got, but I think that the first sort of 10 people that you get in your business are so important. Like, it's the foundations that you're building, isn't it? So if you one bad egg or one bad fit, and you feel it really, really chronically in a small business.
Yeah, keeping the politics.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, have you heard the theory of rock stars and superstars?
I want to say yes, but I don't know. I've heard people use those phrases, but
because like Stephen Quinn, he talks about this a lot, and he's like a leadership coach. I know.
Yeah.
He says not necessarily everyone in business can be a superstar.
No.
Sometimes you just need the rock stars.
Yeah.
I think it partly depends on the size of the business, though, because actually, when you are a small business, I don't think you can afford to have rock stars.
What is the difference then between the two?
So the rock stars are sort of the steady people.
Got you.
Rock stars typically aren't steady.
I don't know. Yeah.
The rock stars tend to actually, I should look into that a bit more. But superstars,
the doers,
rock stars, apparently. So I think the superstars are the A players, and then the rock stars are like the C or B players.
Yeah.
And but we've in our team over the years, we've had people at various levels.
Yeah.
I think at the moment we're probably the closest we've been to having everyone as the A players or the superstars, and it makes a huge difference. I think if people are hiring and they're just settling, they should really ask themselves the question: can I afford to pay that little bit extra to get the right person?
That's what we've just done. Yeah. Exactly what we've just done. We've been doing it ourselves for 3.5 years, and for the first time we've gone to. Do you know Darren Sharp?
I don't know.
So he specialized great guy. Specializes in local business. Specializes in recruiting for marketing and I think technology sectors. So perfect for us. We've known Darren for a little while, and Paul knows him a little bit better than me, but we've just sort of bitten the bullet because we've been with the graphic design role. We've been struggling to get the right caliber of. We need a designer that's going to push us now, and do things that maybe those within the team wouldn't. We need that superstar. So Darren has immediately sent us some candidates that are much closer to where we need them to be. So I think sometimes you've just got to. It can feel, for me personally, working with a recruiter, it does feel expensive. But right at this moment in time, it doesn't, because I'm thinking, well, all the time we're having to put into doing it, it's a no-brainer. We've got to that point now where we can, and we can justify paying a recruiter to do it. So, I think with particular roles, that's the way we'll go now, because it's quite painful doing it yourself, and I'm not the best at it.
I mean, Hannah, you mentioned a cultural fit issue. Obviously every business has them. Do you have every business has a culture as well, but how do you document your culture? How do you create awareness of your culture?
This is a really good, I love this subject, and it's something that we again haven't really known how to do it. So we've got 5 values in the business that we work by, and last year it got to the point where, as the team was growing, and again, it's sort of come down in size a little bit again, but we had a board meeting and we were just saying, we don't, personally for us, we don't want to be the kind of business that just has the values up on the wall or puts them in a document that employees receive, but we need to actually live and breathe them. And I was sort of thinking about what some of the companies I'd previously worked for did. Basically what we've done is we've gone through an exercise with the team where we've come up with different activities for the different values. So we have a day for each value every year. So for the family day, we went up to Delapre, took a picnic, took loads of games. All the employees and the freelancers brought their kids along, and we just had an afternoon at Delapre, just enjoying some downtime together. We've got a day coming up where we're volunteering for Cynthia Spencer Hospice. That's to go against, the quality value that we've got. And I think we're trying to live and breathe them with the team. So every year the team have basically come up with what we're doing for them. Everybody in the team has got a day that they're responsible for. So I think it's trying to find ways to actually physically practice them so that, you know, you're not just putting them up on a wall and saying these are our values. And then in terms of other things that we do things like we regularly go for walks together. You know, someone in the team will go for a walk most days, and we'll normally just say, anyone want to come for a walk? I'm going to go and get some fresh air. So there's not really a day where we don't spend time not at our desks together. We go to the pub and have a drink together. We've just actually had a record month in the business. So as directors, we're currently looking at actually what can we do as a team to celebrate that? Because I think, again, I don't know how often we're going to be able to celebrate those moments. You know, everything passes. So yeah, I think it's just for us finding physical ways of actually living the values together rather than just saying, well, these are what they are. But I do think I think you can over-engineer your values, and you can over-engineer what you do to develop the culture. I think going back to the people that you hire, they have a huge organic contribution to how your culture develops. You know, Lois, who joined us 3 months ago, is just a complete ray of sunshine. Whatever's going on, Lois has sort of developed that role of she'll make you a cup of tea, she'll cheer you up if you're struggling with something. And she's, you know, Delia, our apprentice, is a real like doer and just gets things done. And I think the different individual personalities, you don't need to over-construct it. I think the culture just sort of develops organically. And like with the person who didn't work out recently, they clearly weren't a good fit. So you have to remove them.
Hannah, that's really insightful. You kind of touched on it in terms of like you've explained how friendly your team is.
Yeah.
Like, how do you stop it? How do you create that sort of gap between you as a leader and the rest of your team?
I am not the person to ask. I'm so bad at this.
Because there are challenges with being friends with everyone on your team.
I'm really bad at this, and I definitely am nowhere close to figuring it out. I think I'm quite, and we've got a non-exec director who's brilliant, and a good friend of mine. I've got my previous coach who's still a really good friend of mine and helps me out. So I do have some really good counsel for things like this, but I am an open book and it's who I am. And I find it really difficult. I believe in being open with the team. So I have no problem sharing how much revenue we're doing. I have no issue sharing what the costs are within the business with them. I think it's really important to be transparent. I'm probably a lot more open than people would encourage me to be. So with the previous example of the employee that recently left, we're a very small team in a small office, and it's very obvious when something is happening. It's quite hard to keep anything negative from the team. So for me, it's better to just explain what's happening. So the whole way through that process, I was very open with, this is what's happened, this is what we've done, and this is what we're now currently having to deal with. So if I seem a little bit on edge, this is what's happening, because I don't want them to be wondering what's going on. I also don't want them to be worrying whether their jobs are in danger. I think I currently don't really have probably enough separation from the team, but I actually don't know if I am ever going to want that. And you might, you've been in business a lot longer than me, so you might say, that's a little bit naive. You probably do need that, but I think I'm going to carry on as I am. And I think the way I am with the team is more beneficial than it is a hindrance. So I don't really have any major plans to change that, because I've worked with people, directors of businesses that were hugely open, and that always worked better for me. I prefer to have leaders that I can really talk to and ask questions of and not be scared. I don't want to put too much of a barrier up. There are obviously instances where you have to, but and it makes it hard to have difficult conversations with those people sometimes if they've not quite delivered on something, or but we don't have to do that all that often.
Good leadership is about finding that balance. It's about creating a friendly and professional environment. At the same time, you do need to have a little bit of distance, so you can actually look at things objectively and commercially.
And that's the bit don't get me wrong, we don't overly socialize together. We do as a team a little bit, but it's not. I don't think we go too overboard at the moment. Personally, I just think we're a very small business. I'm also quite informal as a person, so I'm not a fan of being called the boss. I'm not a fan of, from my perspective, yes, ultimately, if something bad happens, I am responsible, or if somebody in the team doesn't do something that they should have, or puts us in a position of difficulty, I am going to have to deal with that. But we're a team. It's quite a flat, we're such a small business, it's quite a flat structure. But I think, I don't know how we've done it. I couldn't tell you sort of like a theory that we've used or a model that we've used, but I do think we do have a nice balance of, it's a friendly environment, but we are here to work hard, and the team know that. And I think if we model that behaviour, I'm not saying this is the right thing, but I'm always first in and I'm typically last out. So there's nothing I would ask anyone in the team to do that I wouldn't do myself. I think that's a big thing. I think not separating yourself too much from the team is also a good thing. But I don't. Like I say, I don't think I've got the answer to that question at the moment. I'm too early.
Most business owners never find the answer to the question.
I think it's really difficult.
Okay, all right. That's fair enough and very honest. So it's. I don't think I've always got the balance right either. No, that's really good. What would you say keeps you up at night?
I didn't have a great night's sleep last night, actually. So good example. I think. For me, it's normally, are the clients happy? Because we're quite proactive with our clients. So we have lots of conversations. Like, I'm very open with the clients, and we'll normally just spontaneously say, how are you finding things? Is there anything we can do to do things better? Are you happy with the service that you're getting? Because I'm not particularly scared of what they're going to say, but I've gone through real peaks and troughs of I'm conscientious to a point where it's a flaw as well, because I mull over how can we be doing things better. I've listened to a lot of podcasts, read a lot of books, and it's all about, for me, like, those what little 1% can we add constantly to just get us a lot further than we currently are. So I think for me, it's
Clive Woodward, the rugby coach. Like, improve 100 things by 1%.
Can we make the boat go faster? Was his as well, I think. So for me, it's it's concerns around, are the clients happy? Because sometimes clients are quite quiet, and that doesn't mean that they're not happy. It just means that they don't have anything to say necessarily. And sometimes them being quiet is a good thing. We've got other clients that are always telling us stuff, and it's just, I think, the client satisfaction is a big thing for me. Also, just, I find it I've had like a constant, and it'd be interesting to see if you've had a similar experience, but I find that when it feels like the business is doing really well, that's when it feels like my well-being isn't doing very well. So when the business is really, it feels like things are going really at a pace, there's momentum, there's a lot of good positive activity, it becomes a lot harder for me to maintain my well-being. You mentioned going to the gym this morning, like, that's a big priority for me as well. And then when I do flip into prioritizing my well-being, it's like I feel like the business isn't doing as well. So I have this constant inner battle between, am I working hard enough? Am I looking after myself too much? I haven't got that balance right yet. And I think when I could work, I am a workaholic naturally, because I really enjoy what I do. So I think I go through phases where I have this thing sometimes where, if we're really busy, for me, it's not so much what keeps me up at night. I go to sleep fine, but then I wake up a lot. And for me, I get this thing in the morning sometimes where if I wake up, I'm straight into my to-do list. And I mean, as soon as I've opened my eyes, there's no gradual waking up. It's just like, right, what have we got to do today? As soon as my eyes are open. And that's because I've probably not closed things off the day before. And that's not a nice feeling.
I used to be like that, because I'd wake up 5 minutes before my alarm went off, like pretty much every morning,
and you're like, bing,
I just jumped to it. And then then I've got 2 young children, so and that can be frustrating. I mean, the kids are great, but like, you get up and you know what you want to do that day, and then suddenly you can't just go and do that. You have to drop the kids off to school, and then you have to get them changed and brush their teeth, and I mean, so it, just mindset wise, it does. You develop this patience, and I think being a parent actually really changed me as a business owner.
Yeah. For the better, do you think?
I yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it definitely it made me a lot more resilient.
Yeah.
It made me look at things on a much more long term basis.
And your perspective, I can imagine your perspective changes a bit, right? Because for me, I now, having started a business with no children, and I also don't have a partner that I have to think about. So it's me, myself, and I that I have to worry about. So that I have so much more respect and empathy for parents who are running businesses, because I just can't imagine how you find a way, right? I've got friends that do it, but juggling all of that whilst also juggling everything that's going on in a business, it's like having two families, isn't it? If you've got a team, it's so I don't know how you guys do it, so hats off to you all.
Well, one of the key things actually, like now I'm reflecting on it, is the time becomes finite when you don't have kids. When I used to run this business and I didn't have kids, I always found like if something needed to be done, I could just work harder, I could work longer.
Yeah, same.
Whereas now, I've got a cut off.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, like, half terms and stuff, I might go away with the kids.
Yeah.
And you've just got this cut off, and when time becomes finite, I mean, time's always finite, really.
Yeah.
Like you can work 60-hour weeks, but that's a finite amount. So you start doing things differently when time is more of a constraint.
Yeah.
Like things where I might have just tried to do it myself before and worked harder, I outsource, or I increase the size of the team, and all those things actually adds value to the business.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's expensive in the short term, it damages profitability.
Yeah.
But the long term, you're creating infrastructure.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think, but the other side of having kids is like you do feel a bit more pressure, like. The risks I would have taken, 5 years ago are not necessary risks I take today.
You've got more responsibility, haven't you? So I do sometimes think for myself, if I had a family, or if I had even like a dog, just somebody else that I had to look after, I do think it would probably help me not burn out quite so much. Because I'm really bad for that. Can't really, like you say, if there's so many hours in the day, I don't have to be home for the kids, or because a partner's going out to play football or hockey or whatever. I don't have any time restraints really like that, so I can just work as long as I need to or want to, and it goes through fits and starts. At the moment, I'm in a period of really not shutting off very well, just because we've got a lot going on, and a lot of the work at the moment is quite heavy on the strategy side, which I tend to lead. So my workload is quite heavy right now. And then there are other periods where actually I find it a lot easier, because we've got to the point where we're fulfilling the run rate work, and that's where the team sort of take over, and I don't necessarily get as involved with the graphics for things anymore. But yeah, it's really hard to control like your inner workaholic when you don't have extra responsibilities. So one day maybe, and then I'll be a little bit more balanced.
Amazing. So Hannah, like this has been really insightful. Actually, one thing I really want to ask you is what's your favorite business book?
Oh, good question. A bit of a niche one probably, but it's called Power. I'm pretty sure it's called Powerful, and it was written by a lady who used to work for Netflix. I can't for the life of me remember her name. It's a red cover. I'll send you the link if you want to include it in the sort of link section below on the video when you upload it. But it's all around like cultural shifts in a business. We've talked about culture quite a lot, and Netflix obviously came into the market and had a really big impact quite quickly. And she talks a lot around how the impact that had on the people in the business. High growth business. And I read it at a point where we were really early on in the business, and it was very it sort of put a bit of a fire in my belly to sort of go for it when we were at that stage. It just sort of made me think, do you know what, come on, let's give it a go. And then I am a massive fan of Start With Why.
Simon Sinek.
Yeah,
He's
big,
great. Yeah.
big fan of Simon Sinek.
And it's
So,
quite important for a marketing agency anyway, because about getting the message right.
Yeah, and I have that conversation with people all the time. A lot of the conversations I have is like, why would people pick you over your competition? So yeah, probably those two.
Have you read Built to Sell?
No.
That's John Warrilow, and it's like the story. It's a fictional story based on real events, but it's about this marketing agency and this marketing agency owner called Alex Stapleton.
Yeah,
and he hates his business because he does a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
He's got really needy customers.
Yeah.
Cash flow issues. A team he doesn't like, and it's a story of how he turns it into a really successful business.
Oh, cool! I'll have a look at that.
Yeah, Built to Sell.
The Third Door is good. Have you read The Third Door?
I haven't, no.
That is what, again, I'm so bad at remembering the names of the authors, but that's really good. That's about sort of not always taking the most direct route. Mm-hmm. So essentially taking the side door.
Is it business related or?
Yeah. Okay. It's about a guy who I read it ages ago, but he was studying a lot and was really just not sure how to make a success of what it was that he was trying to do. And he was trying all of these different ways to succeed, and eventually came to the conclusion that actually sometimes taking the less traveled road, for want of a better phrase, is a better way to go about things. So like I've said recently with people applying for jobs, it's very rare that people reach out directly anymore. Like the most direct route is put your CV on Indeed or whatever, and put your CV on LinkedIn, and then hope that the people who are hiring are going to contact you. But if you really want a job, email me. Why not? Don't always follow the path that everybody else is going on. Like you say, when people are stopping communicating during a pandemic, your attitude was double down, triple down, do more. I think it's a book around just not following the crowd, basically, which I'm a big fan of that sort of mentality. Yeah,
do what everyone isn't doing.
Yeah, stand out.
Within reason, I guess.
Be a bit braver, yeah.
Hannah, that's been absolutely amazing interviewing you on the podcast. And if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
LinkedIn, for sure, yeah. So just Hannah Brady on LinkedIn. You'll see a big blue circle behind my head. Hard to miss. But yeah, I'm very active on there. And all my contact information, mobile number, everything is on there. So if you ever need anything, that's the best place to go.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Everyone, you've been watching the Unrelenting Drive podcast. I'll see you in the next episode.